Are you upset or crushed? Does this look like happiness? I mean, no, it's just how things are. They told him gay people don't belong on TV. Charles Nelson Riley didn't just ignore them, though. He got even. After being kicked off 3 big networks in just 1 week, he was on 27 game shows. His shocking return wasn't even the craziest part. Behind those big glasses and crazy clothes was a secret life that was so scandalous that Johnny Carson cut him off for good. Today, we're going to tell you what really got him banned and the X-rated truth that Hollywood has been trying to hide for 50 years. Reilly was born in the Bronx in 1931 into a family that was not like most families. His dad made ads for Paramount Pictures, and his mom was loud, proud, and known for waving a baseball bat around and yelling out the window. At home, things were loud, messy, and sometimes mean. When his father lost it, things got worse. When he lost his job, he turned to drinking and ended up in a mental hospital. The family never really got better. Charles and his mom went to Hartford, Connecticut after that. They shared a room with 10 family members that was cold, crowded, and didn't have hot water. The young Charles had a hard and strange life. He often felt like he didn't belong anywhere he went. He turned to dolls to get away from everything. Charles was busy making puppet shows out of bits from his mom's sewing kit while other kids played sports. He was sick and had trouble seeing, but he was quiet and inventive. He wasn't like the other boys either. They made fun of him, called him Mary, and told him he wasn't one of them. He was for people and made up whole worlds in his mind. He played Christopher Columbus in his school play when he was only 9 years old. She told his mom, "He's the only real actor I've ever seen." That was the first time someone really saw how talented he was. The fire then came. Charles and a friend went to the Ringling Brothers Circus in 1944. They were just kids having fun. What they found instead was horror. A fire started on the side of the tent while the acrobats flew above. To keep the rain out, gasoline and wax were used to cover the big top, but it caught fire. As a result, people screamed, ran, and stepped on each other. Charles and his friend almost died when they jumped off the benches. There were more than 160 deaths, and a lot of them were children. Charles will always remember the faces that day that were burned. After that, he wouldn't sit in a crowd again. He didn't want to be in the crowd again, but he didn't leave the stage. He didn't move behind it. He used his fear to drive him to keep acting, even though he would never get to see other people do the same. His first wish was to sing in an opera. It was his escape route. He worked hard at the Hartford Art School of Music and gave his voice everything he had. But dreams don't always come true. He had been trained for years, but he had to face the truth. There was no way he could make a living as a singer with that voice. He was upset, but it didn't stop him. He didn't quit. Instead, he changed his plans. He knew he could be on stage again, but not as a singer. His new goal was to become an actor. Giving up opera hurt, but it made room for something even bigger. He went to New York City when he was 18. Stars like Uta Hagen taught acting at the HB school where he joined. He went to school with Jack Lemmon, Gene Hackman, and Jason Robards, all of whom would become famous actors. Even though he joked that none of them could act for shit, he took the work very seriously. He was looking for the bright lights of Broadway, but the real world was harsh, cold, and hungry. He paid only $7 a week to live in a small room without hot water. Getting mail at the Waldorf Astoria at night was what they did. Rich people lived lives he could never even touch. Days were for auditions, but he had to sell his own blood to pay for the train fare because money was so tight. He did it so many times that he passed out in the middle of a step one day, literally drained by the dream he wouldn't give up. He always chose going to an audition over getting food. He was still funny in some way, though. He had that sharp, funny charm that would later light up TV shows even when he was broke and hurting. And just when things looked like they were going his way, he got turned down, which could have been the end of everything. He finally got an audition with a big NBC executive. To look the part, he stole a funeral suit and climbed to the top of Rockefeller Center with hope in his heart. But as soon as he walked in, the man looked at him and told him straight out, "They don't let gay people on TV." That was it. Not a second chance. Not a response. Only a door shut. Only a door shut. This kind of rejection was very bad for jobs in the 1950s, and Reilly almost lost hers. But he chose not to hide who he was, and said he would never do that again. Reilly didn't want to be anyone else, unlike other stars who made up fake lives to fit in. Somehow, that insult gave him more power than praise. It made him hot. He didn't stop. Over time, the wall that had kept him out began to crack. His first movie part was in A Face in the Crowd in 1957, but it wasn't given to him. It wasn't much, but it was something. He got better at timing and learned how to own the stage by doing comedy in Missouri during the summers. Then, in 1960, Bye Bye Birdie came out. Even though he only had a small part, he filled in for Dick Van Dyke. He was getting near. The show was new. It's loud and exciting like rock and roll. A funny poke at the Elvis craze. It was a huge success and ran for more than 600 shows. Reilly saw it as more than just a job. He grabbed his first real shot with both hands, but after a year, they really came into the light. He played Bud Frump in the 1961 movie, How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. The character was lazy, cocky, and didn't deserve anything good, but Reilly made him stand out. The show was a huge hit and won 7 Tonys and a Pulitzer Prize. Reilly won one of them, and that Tony Award changed everything. He was no longer just getting by. He was now a big star on Broadway. He didn't slow down either. In 1964, he played Cornelius Hackle in Hello, Dolly, a show that would go on to become a Broadway classic. Reilly shared the stage with Carol Channing and played a young clerk who was looking for love and excitement. It broke records, won 10 Tony Awards, and ran for almost 7 years. Reilly was nominated for another Tony Award for his performance. By this time, he was very charismatic, funny, odd, and full of heart on stage. He tried something new the next year. Reilly and Julie Harris worked together in Skyscraper, a musical based on a play. It didn't do as well as his other work, but it was the start of a great relationship between the two actors. Even though reviewers didn't always like the show, they couldn't deny Reilly's fire. He pushed every scene to its limits, making people laugh out loud and keeping their attention like no one else could. The year 1968 was the turning point in Charles Nelson Reilly's life. He had been trying for years to find his place in show business. Finally, he got a part that would make him famous. He was chosen to play Claymore Gregg in the sitcom The Ghost and Mrs. Muir, which is about a widow who moves into a haunted house. Played the cowardly owner who rents her the house without telling her that a ghost already lives there. It became a running joke that his character was scared of the ghost. It wasn't just the comedy that made it stand out. There was finally a steady part for Reilly on TV, and people loved him. His show was great, even though it wasn't very long. That role got him just enough attention in Hollywood for people to finally take him seriously. As soon as shooting for the show began, Charles moved to California and fell in love with it right away. It was nice and warm, and everyone was chill. It felt very different from New York. He joked that before he moved to California, he had been cold his whole life. The change wasn't just in the body, it made me feel. He told people that the pressure was different in LA. Actors in New York were always trying to show something. He was able to breathe in Hollywood, though. He could make friends, joke around between takes, and feel like he was a part of something bigger. He was interested in everything, even small things like how people waited a second before getting out of lifts, or how quiet the airport was. He understood that this new life really did feel like home. He also met someone new through late-night TV after he moved. Carson's Tonight Show was the biggest show in town, and Charles was one of the most famous people to appear on it. There was something special about Charles Nelson Reilly and Johnny Carson. Every time Reilly walked onto the set of The Tonight Show, it lit up the screen. He wasn't just a guest, he was a regular. The crowd felt at ease around him because they knew him. Reilly showed up almost 100 times between the late 1960s and early 1980s. He said it was 103 and 105 different times. It didn't really matter what was true. It was important that they had a good time together. Sometimes Johnny would ask about Reilly's mom, which became a joke between them and the crowd. They hadn't practiced or polished their conversation. They talked and laughed a lot, and it felt like they were old friends getting together to catch up. He also let Reilly be himself. even though it was still frowned upon to be publicly gay on TV at the time. The fact that Reilly was always ready made their relationship even more interesting. He lived only a few minutes from the studio and always had a tux on hand in case something came up. Carson didn't get upset when a guest dropped out at the last minute. He called Charles. He once joked that TV guy didn't even list him because he only showed up when someone else couldn't. But there was more to that joke than meets the eye. Carson believed in him. No need for a plot. Reilly could come in from the cold and steal the show. People loved it because that kind of energy doesn't happen very often. He always made things more interesting when he showed up, but you never knew when. And just when everyone thought they knew Reilly, the funny, over-the-top game show host, he threw them all off. One night, the whole room was shocked when a guest said he didn't think about Shakespeare anymore. He went to Doc Severinsen and asked for some chords. Then he sang Hamlet's The Play's the Thing in a strong, serious way. Not a bit of camp or comedy, just real ability. The crowd stopped talking. He wasn't just a silly clown in a loud suit. He had formal training as an actress and really knew how to do his job. That scene was never shown again. Even though the tape was erased, he still remembered it. He did it again in his one-man show years later, showing that he had more sides than most people saw. While their friendship seemed strong, it ended just as quickly as it started. Showed up on Joan Rivers' new talk show one night. He thought of it as just another job. Because Joan was a friend, he didn't see anything wrong with it, but Carson did. He used to teach Rivers things. He was hurt when she started her own show without telling him. She also cut Reilly off when he came on her show. Finally. That's it. Almost 20 years of shows were over. Not one call, not one answer, not a thing. Reilly said he hadn't heard from Carson since then, but he never said anything bad about him either. Either Reilly thought of it as normal. He moved on, but he kept smiling, sharing stories, and talking positively about the man who made him famous on late-night TV. Around the same time, Charles started to show up on Rowan and Martin's Laugh, in a show that was different from everything else on TV. It went really quickly, was very crazy, and was full of psychedelic energy and political jokes. Charles was a good fit. His loud voice, crazy facial expressions, and sudden mood changes made him perfect for the chaos. He didn't need a script. It worked for him to just be himself. There were millions of people watching, and all of a sudden Charles was everywhere. He was no longer just the scared owner. He had a huge following on TV. It was so busy for him that he said in an interview that he had too much work to do for anyone to handle. It was true. What? He was still making guest spots all over the place, like on Arnie and the Dean Martin Show. But nothing was as strange or interesting as Lidsville. One of the odd parts Charles has ever played was Horatio J. Howdo, a bad magician in a world where hats came to life in 1971. Yes, hats! Charles leaned into the show, which felt like a fever dream. He painted his face green, put on an outfit made of layers of wool, and acted like the silliest bad guy you could think of. It was important to him that people call him the Great Hoodoo. The conditions of work were terrible. What I wore made it hard to breathe. Because of that, the kids who saw it will never forget Charles. He lit up the screen on Match Game from 1973 to 1979. He was on the show every time you turned it on, wore big glasses, bright clothes, smoked a pipe, and had a crazy sense of humor. He wasn't just pretending to be someone else. He played the part. He made the chair in the upper right corner his throne. When Richard Dawson joined them, it was like a comedy trio had been born. He hit it off right away with Brett Summers. Fafa were more than just funny. They ran the show. There was a time when Charles went on 27 game shows in 1 week. It wasn't just work. That was payback. Revenge on everyone who told him he wouldn't make it. Uncle Croc's block came next. It was strange, brave, and nothing like any other kids' show out there. Reilly played a grumpy crocodile who was very unhappy with his job as a kids' show host. The show didn't try to hide how angry it was. It leaned into it by using both live action and animation and making fun of other well-known shows. They had fake versions of well-known figures like Steve Exhaustion and Captain Clangaroo. People didn't know what to think of it though. The numbers were terrible, and the show was canceled after only a few months. The head of ABC was so angry that he severed all ties with the production business. Reilly didn't seem to mind, though. Why? His life had changed because of TV. He learned that making a few guest spots with Dean Martin could make him more money than working on Broadway for a whole year. That thought hit me hard. It was in California that he stayed. He bought a house in Beverly Hills and a big boat. He was no longer cold in New York. He was lying out in the sun. He joked that before he went to LA, he had never been cold. He was everywhere by 1975, was on game shows, had guest spots, and had comedy hours. For someone who had been told by an NBC executive that they don't show gay people on TV. Every joke, every paycheck, and every show felt like a big slap in the face to the system. Reilly felt a stronger pull toward directing after years of playing and learning from greats like Herbert Berghoff and Uta Hagen. It wasn't a quick jump. Those who knew him well could see that it was a slow, steady move. He was always looking at the little things that brought a scene to life. He kept acting, like in God's Favorite in the mid-1970s. He was already thinking more like a director, with an eye on other people and the big picture. At the same time that year, directed his friend Julie Harris in The Belle of Amherst, a one-woman show about Emily Dickinson. Using Dickinson's own words to tell her life story was a risky project, because only one actor played 15 different roles. But something magical happened when Reilly told them to Tiguara. People and reviewers alike were amazed by how Harris brought the poet's world to life. It wasn't just a hit. The show became a moment. Harris got a Tony and a Grammy, and the show took him all over the country. Reilly saw it as more than just progress. It showed that he could make serious, powerful entertainment. It showed that he was good at making silence emotional and taking players to new places they hadn't been before. Then, in 1979, Break a Leg came out. Things didn't go his way this time. Ira Levin wrote the play. She had just finished writing the huge hit Death Trap. People had very high hopes, but on the first night, everything went wrong. The crowd didn't connect with the show, so it ended after only one performance. It was one of the worst failures on Broadway ever. It hit Reilly like a punch in the gut. All the fun in making plans, it was all over in one night. The hope. He had been in theater before, but he didn't let that define him. He took a step back, got back to work, and kept going. Because one mistake doesn't erase everything in theater. It's only a part of the story. Years went by. Reilly kept up her artwork, but she did it in private.